Hyperdrive control systems were protected with codes, but those codes could be overridden by someone who was familiar with the crystals used in these control systems. An engine cooling system ran through the length of the slender midsection of the ship and into the rear where the engines were located. Spatial gases could interfere with the even flow of power to the hyperdrive emitters and thus prevent a hyperspace window from becoming fully formed. When power to the hyperdrive emitter was reduced, it was possible to create a partial shift into hyperspace, which could take the ship out of the surrounding space-time temporarily. A trip to the Pegasus galaxy using its Asgard intergalactic engines would take approximately 18 days.
The ship's sublight engines got the ship to accelerate up to 110,000 miles per second, which was just over half the speed of light. An ignition module had to be calibrated to within 1% margin of error in order for these engines to actually start. If outside of this margin, the module would burn out and the engines would fail to start. Sublight engines placed the Prometheus in Earth's orbit from ground elevation in less than 30 seconds, as mentioned earlier. The control relay for the sublight engines were located on deck 8, and the sublight engines had a variety of different outputs, which were controlled through the ship's helm. One such output was referred to as emergency thrust, and was used when Prometheus left Antarctica to meet Anubis' fleet in Earth orbit.
The Prometheus employed a tripod-style landing gear system with one leg in front and two in the rear. The slender midsection of the ship had no support. The ship needed to engage the deceleration thrusters in order to obtain a stationary point above the planet's surface before landing. Most likely the anti-grav pod assisted in that landing process. The landing gear operated just like that of a fighter jet and could be retracted back into the body of the ship. Once landed, the ship had a large ramp that could be lowered to load supplies or the X-302s into the main hangar bay. Pre-final refit, that is.
The X-303 had 16 to 24 railguns, depending on the source, which had become standard on F-302 fighter interceptors and all Daedalus-class vessels for ship-to-ship combat. Just a few shots able to take out a death glider relatively quickly and deal damage to an Al-Kesh or even a Hatak.
The X-303 also have 12 missile batteries and Naquadah-enhanced nuclear warheads. These missiles were able to take out a death glider quickly and deal a large amount of damage to Al-Kesh and Hataks as well. However, all of the Prometheus' weapons proved ineffective against the Ori weapons' satellite shields. It was only later that the addition of the Asgard beams brought Earth's offensive technologies in line with the strongest of Earth's foes.
Although the Prometheus didn't get to see that because they were blown up beforehand. Sad face. Now, despite being operated and maintained by the United States Air Force and crewed by Air Force personnel, it actually fell under the purview of the Office of Homeworld Security.
The ship initially relied heavily on reverse-engineered Goa'uld technology in a large number of its key systems. The original codename for the ship was the X-303, and it was developed and constructed by Area 51 R&D, but was subcontracted to civilian companies without the true nature of the project being revealed. The Earth installation that housed the Prometheus was located in Nevada, Area 37-92NV. It was there that she was assembled and maintained. While docked here, she was held in place by large docking clamps. See, people are right in assuming that shady alien stuff happens in Area 51. I'm telling you.
They had to make that joke in the show. Yeah, why not? Access to that subterranean bay was given through an elevator housed in a small shack that was surrounded by an electric fence. As you can see from the show, very heavily guarded and secret and impressive.
We don't want to draw attention to it by throwing guards around it.
They really didn't. That's the exact opposite. The ship itself entered and exited through large retractable roof doors. The ship was named Prometheus by the time of its initial shakedown cruise under the command of Colonel William Ronson. Unfortunately, the X-303 was hijacked while still incomplete by rogue NID agents, who took Major Samantha Carter and Jonas Quinn as hostages in the attempt, but Colonel Jack O'Neill and Tilk had secretly crept onto the ship via a death glider and reclaimed control of the ship to stop the NID agents. This theft, however, led to a Goa'uld who was working with the NID agents to actually complete the X-303's far from operational hyperdrive, thereby allowing them to escape. A rather good side effect, it is worth saying, since we recaptured the ship not long after.
Nice. During the ship's first mission to test its new, fully operational status, the Naquadah reactor core, which enabled the ship to travel in hyperspace, began to act up, resulting in the Prometheus dropping out of hyperspace prematurely and ultimately falling 49,000 light-years short of its intended destination.
As a result of this, the reactor core itself had to be jettisoned because of the instability, and despite the shielding, the resultant EM impact caused great damage to the ship. As such, the Prometheus had to land on the planet Tagaria. After some conflicts with the Tagarans, they were allowed to stay and await parts and repair equipment brought through the Stargate in order to get the ship back home to Earth. Quite amazing for the first maiden voyage to then get lost 49,000 light years from Earth.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
A hyperdrive engine upgrade was installed, complements of the Alkesh, and because the Alkeshis were 1/10 the size of the Prometheus, the trips in hyperspace had to be done in spurts, allowing time for the engines to cool down and prevent systems damage.
Sadly, in 2005, having served as a means to transport and defend Earth from the Goa'uld for 3 years, the Prometheus was ultimately destroyed in battle. Following the Prometheus' destruction, it was succeeded in this role by the BC-304 Odyssey, the second Daedalus-class ship launched.
Despite initial plans to construct more of the BC-303 class ships, it was actually rendered obsolete by the more powerful and advanced BC-304, ultimately resulting in the Prometheus itself being the sole member of the entire BC-303 class design of starship.
And I think that does it for the facts and figures and stats on the Prometheus X-303 from Stargate. Now it's time to say what you think about this ship. But Stuart, I want to hear your impressions first. What do you think of this ship, having done all the research and... Yeah.
It's really interesting. It's a cool first Earth spaceship. They should have called it Enterprise. I'm just saying. I think O'Neill was right. It's got a cool look. It's kind of a little bit reminiscent of Battlestar Galactica from the 70s, a little bit with the pods on the side. I know they don't serve the same function or whatever, but
yeah.
Overall, I can see this being a realistic looking design that we would come up with. It's something that's very militaristic and very similar to aircraft carriers and stuff that we have now, so it makes perfect sense. So I think it's a great looking design.
I think what you said there is absolutely how I feel. It's not the best looking design because it's so clunky. Yeah. That's what I think one of its charms, because it's not what you'd think of as a spaceship looking, but that's its charm. It is the oddball. It is the ship that was our very first attempt. We're putting all this technology together. It has, a body and then just these two big pods and these big engines and just what we associate with a command tower like we have aircraft carriers. It has all these elements that you'd have just sort of cobbled together. And it is worth saying, and while it's not explicitly said in the show, one of the things they sort of hint is that earlier in season 4 they actually do find a underground Goa'uld sort of team that's building a ship on Earth, and it's sort of implied that they take parts of that and that helps them finish the design. So in my head I always thought that that's part of why the ship looked so odd, is because they took these big components of this other alien ship and they grafted it onto some existing things they had. Hence why it's a bit more of a higgledy-piggledy, maybe the hyperspace pods or something. And then we get to the Daedalus class, which I think you know what it looks like as well. It's much more integrated. It looks much like a battleship, as you say, but that's why this is a cool first ship. And it was an incredible experience to see it. Someone who loves ships, as you know, and the audience knows, seeing her first appear was like, we've got spaceships now. And it's cool. It is a cool design, and the bridge is amazing, and the story you get, the first story with the Prometheus is really excellent. So it's a very interesting ship, and it's nice it lasted so long, although it then died and then gets replaced by Daedalus classes. I know that a lot of fans out there lament they never got to see the Daedalus and Prometheus together. That's why I've done animations with them together for this episode, and both 3D models from the show, so it is them together.
That is very cool. My real question is, how did it launch from Area 51 without being seen by numerous people that go and stake out Area 51 looking for alien spacecraft?
Yeah,
it's pretty big.
yeah, bigger than it says. No, yeah, that's a good point, and it does that often.
You think they would just keep it in orbit or something?
They do a lot of the time, but I think earlier on, especially, they obviously have to refuel and things. 30 seconds from orbit to ground is like you just park and then back up, and it takes longer to park sometimes. Point, Although I guess the whole going down bit would take more. What do you think about the whole scale situation? And obviously, I wrote that part of the script. I did quite a lot of research, and you'll when you watch the final episode, Stu, you'll see the visuals of all that. But what do you think of the scale, how I worked it out, and how big it is?
Well, as always, I appreciate your attention to detail, especially for the fans to really kind of fix things. But yeah, I love how you take the little Viper pilot, because it's scaled correctly, right? 6 foot, and you fit it in other things, and that judges the size on things. So it makes me question, though, the number of decks that we stated earlier. I believe we said 17.
17,
and if it's upscaled more so than those figures that I based the research off of, I would think that there would probably be more decks than 17.
The one thing I would say about this is that we cover a lot of other sci-fi shows now on Fleetyards, and Star Trek is our baseline, and while there is space between decks, the hull is not a thick thing like in between, and it's a very refined piece. The Prometheus, and if you watch the show, they've got girders, they've got these big bulking things just to keep structural together. So decks aren't this close apart. I would say there's a big chunk of metal in between them just to give the space, just give structure. Plus, we even see some Jeffries tubes. In one specific episode, we see her crawl, so there is space in between. So I would just hazard to say that it's still 17, but just bigger. Yeah. And it's worth pointing out that while people, as I said earlier, think of the pods as being the F302 launch bays, that was only at the end. And in the diagram that you'll see on the screen from the actual book, which has some inconsistencies, but it says those middle two parts. Again, you've seen the animation that I made for this episode. That's where the fighters launch from, and that entire middle bit is a bay. So I think the 14 decks are in some areas, because obviously a large portion of it is being the big engine, a large portion of it is the hangar, a large portion of it is the storage rooms, because obviously they have no replicators. Every bit of water, food, fuel, everything has to be on the ship. So I think 17 decks of actual crew area, and then bigger decks for other things, I think makes it make sense. Yeah. Even if it's a bigger ship.
Yeah, and like you said, between decks, there's conduits for electrical and venting for oxygen and air and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of machinery and stuff that would be between decks and Jeffries tubes, like you said, to access that stuff. So
my biggest point, which again I did some research for this, it sounds like a big ship, and I've done scale shots with other sci-fi universes, and it feels less huge, but compared to Star Trek, again, it seems so big, especially when it's our first ship. It's a very rudimentary, only 115 people, whatever. But take a look at the ship from 2006. There's a specific scene where they go into the engineering room and they look at the monitors. They are clearly still those huge back monitors. They haven't got touchscreens or flat screens yet. This is the past. Their technology is not advanced. Look at the dials of that very first ship. They are so basic and rudimentary. Partially because the budget couldn't buy really expensive things. The Daedalus, they use the same set. They just re-engineered to make it look more advanced. That's why the jump is so dramatic.
We said that the ship cost just over $2 billion to build, but Disney bought Star Wars for like $4 billion. So I mean, really, the military is obviously skimping out on parts too. So,
but I mean, it's like if you look at the tech, it's so not advanced that why would you really think it would take a lot to build a spaceship? Look how much physical space we needed just to create, we had the space shuttle and then this big rocket just to get into space. We don't build things very refined when they need to do a really advanced thing. It gets more advanced as it goes on, but it still works when it's a very big, bulking, not refined ship, and especially the technology, as I said. So I'm fine with the scale. It does seem big to me. The scale that they say, especially compared to, say, an Enterprise, it feels much more natural, and I'll do a shot of them combined. You think of that as they're almost the same size, things that big. But then you put, combine a person with the bridges, and it just doesn't work. Because the bridge of the Prometheus is pretty big. It's almost the size of the Connie. It's an interesting ship, and I wouldn't say it's one of my favourites, but it's certainly, it'll always have a place of love in my heart, because it was that first. Stargate is now a space, infinite possibilities, and that was my show when I was a teenager, so I have a lot of love for that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that sums it up. This was a fun episode to research. Like, I've watched a lot of Stargate. Not a lot. I've watched some Stargate. My wife tried to get me to watch it, and I haven't really got into it yet, but I have seen bits and pieces here and there, so I do know kind of what's going on-ish. And so this was really fun to research and learn some more stuff about it, and to hear, to get all the information and write it down. It's starting to get locked in my brain, and I really want to check the series out more. And thank you to you for all the great animations, first of all, and all the work you do. But to kind of get this size conundrum thing squashed, that's always a problem, even with Trekyards stuff. We always find size discrepancies when we research Star Trek ships. So to actually work it out with the models you have is a fantastic way to do it, and I think that's great. So
and obviously, we are trusted here at Trekyards, the Trekyards channel, and we have the Star Trek models. We have a lot of these other science fiction models, and it's such an honor, honestly. And it lets us do these other things. We're not taking a fan-made model where we just used some pictures and then we can just show it. No, we can extrapolate. We can look at all the details. So many things we can do that are real documentary, and we're so honoured to do that. But it's all for you guys, and obviously, as Stuart said at the beginning, this episode was made possible because of you guys' Patreon donations. We released those trailers in February for Prometheus and Pegasus, and now finally you guys have helped us reach our goals. and build the channel to deliver these episodes. We hope we've done this one justice for you with all the animations, all the renders. Stuart's amazing work on the script. I mean, I was blown away by the detail you went into for this script, and then I came in and used my internal knowledge of the universe, add it a bit more. I think it really came together, and I'm so excited for the fans to see their money, almost their donations going towards a good thing. And these episodes you will get for other sci-fi ships. If you have real models, if we don't, we'll see. But you guys keep supporting us on Patreon, our monthly donation service, and we can keep these amazing other looks coming to you. So please do, and we can't wait for the next episode, Pegasus, and then the full episodes if we reach the 1,000. It's exciting.
That's right, guys. We went into a lot of effort for this one for you. So if you liked it, please hit the like button. Don't forget to share this video around to wherever you think people would enjoy it. There's a little bell notification symbol there. Click that. It'll notify you every time we get a new video released for you guys, either Trekyards or Fleetyards. And we really appreciate all you guys do for us. So until next time, I'm Captain Foley.
And I'm Commander Cockings.
And we'll see you guys through the gate. Bye, everybody.
Yes.